Welcome to Cold War Conversations, the home of real stories of the Cold War.
I was very upset because they had gotten rid of the cartoons on TV. We had half an hour of Tom and Jerry or Disney cartoons per week on TV, and they got rid of them and replaced them with some engineer cartoons from the Soviet Union. So I wrote these manifestos and said, "Down with Ceaușescu, I want more cartoons."
Romania in the 1980s was a country of empty shops, power cuts, rationing and fear. But for one little girl, it was also home. In this episode, author Oana Aristide shares the remarkable childhood experiences that inspired her novel Astronaut. From writing an anti-Ceaușescu protest demanding more cartoons to surviving freezing winters, queuing for food and learning not to trust the wrong people, her memories bring Cold War Romania vividly to life. Oana explains how children experience dictatorship differently from adults, revealing a world where imagination flourished despite repression. Rich with humour, warmth and poignant reflection, this conversation offers a unique perspective on life behind the Iron Curtain in Ceaușescu's Romania. I'm delighted to welcome Oana Aristide to our Cold War conversation. Oana's book, Astronaut, is available via a link in the episode information, and every purchase will help support the podcast.
The first 10 years of my life were the 80s in Romania.
You set it in Sighișoara?
Sighișoara, yes.
Oh, okay. Gosh, I'm getting my pronunciation correct for a change
It's not an
today.
easy one.
No. Why was it set there? Was that where you were brought up?
I was brought up there, and it was easier to write about a place that I knew well.
Can you describe what Sighișoara was like in the late 80s?
It's unusual. It's not a typical place in a communist country because it's a medieval town. The school I went to, the buildings are from the 12th century. So there's this mix of the sort of rich and colorful history, but then you have everything that's new, that's from one generation back, is grey and sad and uniform.
And I think it's in Transylvania, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I was doing a bit of background research on this and saw that somebody had the bright idea of trying to build a Dracula theme park next to it.
Yes, it's better. It's better known now as the birthplace of Dracula.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Who was in your immediate family when you were there?
I grew up with my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. My father is from Yemen. My parents met when my father was an exchange student in Romania. Romania and Yemen were both part of something they call the non-aligned countries. It was countries that nominally weren't aligned with either the US or Russia. And they had their own little trade programs and student exchanges. So my father was in Romania studying, met my mom. And then, because he was a foreigner, he was allowed to travel, and something which Romanians were not normally allowed to do. And my mother was allowed to go with him, but they had to always leave behind the child to make sure they would come back. And because I was the oldest child, I was left with my grandma, and my sister went abroad with them. So most of the 80s I spent with my grandma.
And what was your grandma like? She would have obviously had possibly experience of World War II and certainly the whole of the communist period.
You're right. She was a child during the Second World War, and then she married a lawyer who came from, let's say, a reasonably wealthy family. But after communism, everything was confiscated, and the people who were considered enemies of the state simply by virtue of them having been wealthy or having been intellectuals were persecuted. So her husband, my grandfather, was sent to the canal, as it was known at the time. The communist regime, they built the Danube-Black Sea Canal mainly with forced labor, with political prisoners.
And so was your grandfather not on the scene when...
No, he died before I was born.
And so how did your grandmother support you and her?
She was working. My parents were sending money. My grandma, she was a judge. Our finances were similar to everyone else's. there was some money and almost nothing to buy. I don't remember anyone complaining of not having money. There was just never anything to buy with it.
Is the character the judge in the book based on her?
She didn't talk to me about any cases. I would like to think that if she had that kind of case, she would react ethically. But I don't. It's not a real story, that one.
I'm trying to piece together fact from fiction here. So where were you living? Were you in flats or some sort of other?
We were in a small flat, similar to Leah's flat that's described in the book. But actually, the flats in Romania were very similar at the time. You would go from house to house and you would see the same object. I think one of the characters points this out at some point, that there's one of every object in every house, the same thing, the same blanket, the same statue, the same decorative object.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's Konstantin, the detective, mentions that in there. I was going to ask you if you had any relatives abroad, and obviously you would have had your Yemeni side of the family. So were they sending you gifts or anything like that?
My mother and my father did. I wasn't close to the other Yemeni side of the family. They didn't speak English. I had only met them once when I was 4 years old, before my sister was born. So no, I wasn't really in touch with them. I did see a lot of objects from the West via my kindergarten and school. In Transylvania, there's a German ethnic minority, Saxon ethnic minority, and there were kindergarten and primary schools in the German language. And they tended to have relatives in West Germany who were sending them things. So you would see the sort of thing that Leah in the book is fascinated by, very colorful pen holders and toys and just things that look like alien objects from her perspective.
One of the themes in the book is that Leah is concerned about how colour is being lost in Romania, and the greyness and the drabness. That's how you experienced it?
Yes, except I don't think I made that connection at the time. I just noticed that there were things that were from elsewhere that were very colorful compared to our things. If you were a biologist and the two would be side by side, you would say this is from a different continent. And when I realized how stark the difference was, it was because of a short film I saw, I think in the early 90s. It was footage from a Bucharest street. And I was watching this, just a street in the center of Bucharest, and thinking that it's black and white footage. And then suddenly a yellow car enters the frame, and I realized, no, this was color film. It was just so gray that you could think the center of a capital city is black and white.
Were there any relatives in the family who were members of the Communist Party?
I was under the impression that everyone had to be a member of the Communist Party, everyone who had any sort of civil servant job. Again, we didn't discuss this, but I remember at the revolution, when the last couple of days, when we were fairly certain that the regime would be overthrown, that my grandma was wondering whether she should burn her membership card, and was in two minds about it, didn't know if she would burn it and they didn't go away, if she would be in trouble, or if it's also sad that how frightened were they if they thought that the regime that comes after it would punish them for being members of a party that they were forced to be members of.
Did your grandmother or your mother and father discuss the regime at home at all?
Not in front of me. And they were trying to pretend that it's okay. It was strange. They would sometimes praise Ceaușescu, and then they would let something escape them that made it clear they don't like him. It was this. They tried to avoid saying something that I might repeat in school or with the other kids.
Because this is the challenge with Leah, isn't it? And her parents, is that she does say things at school that she shouldn't say. Did you have any experience of that?
Yes, one of the scenes in the book is that when Leah writes something like a manifesto and leaves it in front of her tower block, I did something like that, but I was very upset because they had gotten rid of the cartoons on TV. We had half an hour of Tom and Jerry or Disney cartoons per week on TV, and they got rid of them and replaced them with some engineer cartoons from the Soviet Union. So I wrote these manifestos and said, "Down with Ceaușescu, I want more cartoons."
Wow.
And nobody was
Wow.
very happy about that.
I can imagine not, because I guess the impact on the rest of your family would not have been good.
Yeah, and luckily a neighbor saw me do it and brought them back to my grandma before anyone else found them.
So like Comrade Popper in the book.
Yes. You've got all the characters right.
Hey, I told you, I read the book.
You memorized it.
I do a bit of preparation here, and yeah. You experienced the power cuts and the queuing as well?
Yes, there was a lot of that. What I didn't experience was, I'm aware now that all the grown-ups were very stressed about putting food on the table and stressed about the kids being undernourished. We had very little meat. This is not something I was aware of at the time. I thought the queues were annoying. I was never in a panic about attending one. It was something they forced me to do. So I wasn't experiencing the same level of distress that grown-ups were.
The power cuts would come unannounced. So how did you light your home or cook in those situations?
We had those oil lamps that are mentioned in the book for light. There were winters we went to bed wearing all our clothes, like hats and gloves and everything. It's pretty cold in Transylvania, so if the power goes in winter, that's bad. And there are people who did things like, we had gas ovens, and the gas wasn't from your own boiler. It was the town's gas. If they would cut the heating, then some people decided to risk it and sleep with the oven on and just try to warm the room. Maybe they would sleep in the kitchen and try to get it warm via the fire. But then if they would also cut the gas and then turn it back on, people were sleeping in that room. This is something that happened routinely, that people would die because of gas poisoning, because they tried to heat a house with the gas.
Wow. And I think you had a mishap yourself with an oil lamp.
Yes. So how do you know that?
Again, research. Don't worry, I'm not Securitate here, but I do like to find out what I can.
Yes, that scene is also true. I was drawing next to an oil lamp and it slipped on my hand. I still have the scar.
It was in an interview that I found online.
I'm relieved.
Interview there. Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry. And when were you helping your grandmother get food? Were you out like queuing for food?
It's hard for me to, I don't really know how often I did it. I don't have a sense of it, but I remember many queues. I remember having to queue very early in the morning. Sometimes the deliveries, if it was something very valuable, like any kind of meat, then they would be announced maybe the day ahead and people would camp outside the shop. But usually it was the grown-ups who had to do it because they didn't, especially if it was something important, they didn't trust the kids to be able to hold their place in line.
In the book, you talk about eating chicken claws. So is that actually the foot of the chicken rather than anything else?
Yes. Yeah. The last bit of the foot. It was fine.
Yeah. The bit about queuing in the book fascinated me because you had the detail there, but I think one of my favourite bits in the book, and there were loads of great little like details that you've got in the book, and I don't want to spoil people with revealing too much of the plot here, but the thing about the butcher's shop hoax, can you just reveal that for us?
Because there was a shortage of almost anything. There was a shortage of toilet paper, there was flour, everything, every foodstuff was rationed. People would queue sometimes without knowing what's being sold. They would just see that some people are standing in line and get behind them, and almost anything that shop would sell would be useful to them. So in the book, a character uses this, what do you call it, this habit to, as a trick, let's say, to gain something.
Yeah, they start a queue at a closed shop.
Yes,
and people
does.
join it because the queue's and there must be something good at the end, is the theory. Yeah?
Yes.
Is that how it works?
Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant. And obviously with Leah being 8 years old, I think in the book, she's at school. Can you tell me much about your schooling and what that was like?
Again, because I was in this German school, I think it was less influenced by the regime than the normal Romanian school. Every school book had the front page with a photo of Ceaușescu and a poem, and we had to sing songs and learn poems to celebrate the National Day or Labor Day, but it wasn't non-stop. And I think I got the chance to learn other things as well via the German language and the German teaching. I can't say I felt policed by the school or persecuted and forced to be a regime puppet.
So you didn't have a comrade cauliflower then?
I did. No, I actually had a very nice teacher, but I knew there were several schools in town, and I had friends who were attending them, and I knew it could be like that. I had heard stories about teachers who were like that.
And because you're at the German school, you learning in German?
Yes. Romanian is taught as a foreign language there, and all the other classes were in German.
Wow. So the Germans were a protected minority then within Romania?
They had some additional rights, let's say. I think they were allowed to have more contact with the West. I don't know if it's fair to say they were protected. They had this little community, and they had their own churches, and they were allowed to have schools in German. But they were, on the other hand, they were queuing with us. They had they suffered from the same shortages. They had no political freedom. Let's say they had some cultural freedom.
So they could celebrate their, I don't know, saints' days or
yes,
certain German celebrations.
Yes. One impact that they had was that there was a lot of when there was the black market currency was German marks, Deutsche Marks, and there were shops that were, on the face of it, they were supposed to be for tourists, but people found ways of finding someone who had their passport and had Deutsche Marks and could maybe buy a chocolate bar. So there were these signs of wealth and shops that had things we wanted even there, but they were very restricted.
Yeah, I think that was bizarre in amongst other countries in the Eastern Bloc. I know the East Germans had intershops, which were similar, and I think Czechoslovakia had the Berezovska shops, which were the same things. You could get Levi jeans and Coca-Cola and all sorts of stuff there, but you had to pay for it in a hard currency, i.e. a Western currency.
Yes, in Romania you had to have dollars or German marks, and I think you had to have your passport, which you never had. The police kept your passport.
Okay. And what were your friends like at school? Did you have a Dora there? And just if you can explain the character of Dora as well.
The character Dora is a very studious classmate of Leah's, but who also has, her parents are important. I think in the book her father is the prosecutor in town, and she is favored by the teachers. And whenever there's a prize to be won, she's the main candidate to win it, whether she deserves it or not.
And did you have any friends like Dora?
I think because I was in the German class, and they tended not to have politically important positions, I didn't. I don't remember experiencing that.
And you were in the equivalent of the Young Pioneers.
Yes.
And
But this was, you were enrolled in that automatically.
Okay, so you couldn't opt out?
No, I'd never heard of anything like that.
Okay,
You have to fact check me on this, but I don't think you had the option of doing that.
Yeah, it would certainly put you under the spotlight of the regime if you did ask for that. And what did you get up to as a young pioneer? How did that work?
There were probably kids who were more active in it. The way I remember it, it was a uniform we wore on national holidays, on parades, when we had to perform publicly and recite these patriotic poems and songs. I don't remember having much to do with it outside of preparation for holidays. But probably, I think I also left Romania when I was quite young. So after the 5th year of school, I think there were summer camps that you could attend. And
when you were at school, did you have to do things like this competition that Leah has to enter? Just trying to remember what it was called. Something about drawing of a socialist utopia.
Yes, whenever there was a competition, whether it was an essay that you had to write or draw something, the theme was always something either about how beautiful the country is or how amazing Ceaușescu and his wife are. It was hard to get around that, and it was not very inspiring.
No, I can imagine. Because Leah falls foul at school a couple of times, doesn't she? Because she draws a monster on the official national map of Romania.
If you look, you know what the map of Romania looks like. It really looks a bit like a flatfish. It just needs an eye, and then you paint an eye on it and color it green, and it's a flatfish. And since we had the map in almost every school book, it was tempting to doodle on it, around it, on a map in the classroom.
Did you get up to any mischief at school?
You mean political mischief?
Any sort of mischief?
I don't remember anything particular.
Okay. Because the title of the book is from some mischief that Leah gets up to.
Yes, she's using a word she's not allowed to use, and it's not explained to her properly why she can't use it, so rebels against it.
The word is astronaut, and obviously in the Eastern Bloc they call it cosmonaut, so she gets reprimanded over that.
Yes, she has access to a pre-communist book that she inherited from her grandfather, and she sees the word and uses it in school, and yes, gets in trouble with her teacher for it. And she's very, as many children are, she's very avert. She doesn't like it when she's just told to do something for the sake of it when it's not properly explained. And these things were never properly explained.
Yeah, it was just, you just need to do it.
You just need to do it, yes. I remember going to vote with my grandma, and she explained to me the concept of elections, and then my reaction was like, yay, we'll get rid of them. She was like, no, we can only vote with Ceaușescu. And then she couldn't explain to me, why do we have elections then? Why are we voting? It's all pretense. It's a circus. But
yeah, and
by
I think
the time you've had 30 years under communism, they just did it. They didn't even wonder about it.
And the book really illustrates well that whole climate of fear and sort of self-censorship of people, because they know what they can't say, and self-censor, certainly publicly, but you've also got this culture of surveillance and informers. Did your mother and father or grandmothers come up against the security services in their daily life?
They were constantly warning me about talking to anyone. Like, they would say that even not to trust even people we considered friends of the family, that I should never repeat anything I hear in the house to anyone else. There were particular neighbors that they thought were Securitate informers, and they were extra dangerous to talk to. And I don't know if these people were curious about everyone, or they were curious about me because of my father, who was a foreigner. But they did always try to get me to talk and tell them things. And where's your father? Where's your mother? And either I would try to come up with some excuse, or my grandma would come and rescue me. But they definitely existed.
I think we've established that, Leah is sort of, some of the experiences there are based on your experiences. Now, there's other characters in there. There's Comrade Mantia, who is Leah's neighbour and a retired professor. Is that based on anybody that you knew, or is that he's a complete fictional character?
He's a complete fictional character. I didn't know anyone like that.
And how did you arrive at these characters? What was the research that you were doing to obviously expand from your own personal experience that wider knowledge of how the Romanian regime worked?
Comrade Mantia, let's say, he's a composite of different real people. There was someone who had a relative high up in the Communist Party, who therefore could get away with some things that other people didn't. There was also a general tolerance of anyone who was an alcoholic. It was assumed that they're just drunk, they don't know what they're talking about. And by then, so at the beginning of the regime in the 50s, it was extremely dangerous to even be rumored as being anti-communist, and you could end up dead or sent to the canal or in horrible prisons. By the 80s, it was less. People were terrified into compliance, and the regime almost didn't need to do much. People were genuinely policing themselves. And by then, as far as I know, the common thing, if someone said something politically not acceptable, and they would be declared insane. And that's the worst thing that could happen to them, unless they did something extreme. But it had become less dangerous to take a stand. But almost nobody was taking a stand.
Understood. The character of the detective is an interesting one, Konstantin, because he's a criminal detective. He's not directly part of the security services.
No, he's a policeman, yes. They usually didn't have anything to do with politics.
And how did you manage to explore that character? Because I think often with these totalitarian states, we get obsessed by the secret police, and perhaps rightly, but it's less recognised that the regular criminal police that you'd have in every society still exists and is still out there investigating crime. How did you manage to build out that character?
I imagine his job was similar to my grandmother's. The job of a policeman and the job of a judge are useful jobs for a society. And they were trying to do that without contributing too much to the maintaining the regime itself. And I try to imagine how I would feel had I grown up in that world. He doesn't rebel, but he also hasn't lost his humanity. He's aware of what he's complicit in.
I like his character because you have got that nuance in there, and he's almost got this like sensitive side where he's writing these fairy tales in I think it's green ink, in a notebook that he tells to his son, which is a sort of a way of getting away into another dimension, away from his work, away from what life is like in Romania.
Yes, and also teaching his son some things. I think just trying to teach him to express himself in ways that wouldn't harm him later on.
There's loads of levels in this book which I really enjoyed, and it's rare I get a chance to read fiction because I'm normally bogged down in non-fiction, but I did really enjoy this.
I was worried you would think that everything in the book is true and I would have to disappoint you then.
No, I wasn't expecting that. When the Ceaușescu regime fell, did your grandmother or any of your relatives ask to see their Securitate file?
If they did, then I don't know it. I expect my family would have quite a big file, having, my mom marrying a foreigner and then my grandfather having been a political prisoner. But no, I don't know that they tried to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting question, that, because when I ask it, I often get the answer, I wouldn't want to see my file.
You would probably find out that people you trusted were spying on you. It's very unlikely that anything good will come out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have been in their situation if I would have asked for it, but I understand why they didn't.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a bit let sleeping dogs lie, and I don't want to find that my best friend or somebody close is not who they appeared.
It would alter the past in a way that would hurt you and you can't do anything about now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When you left in 1990, because the whole colour thing, what was your first experience of leaving Romania and going to another country? Was that like a sensory overload for you, or what was that like?
I was briefly out of Romania visiting Hungary, and even in Hungary, it was very different. I remember the shops being full, and I couldn't believe we could go to shops that were always full with things that you would want to buy. There was a national obsession with bananas and Coca-Cola. And so that was the peak wealth, if you had bananas and if you had Coca-Cola. And then obviously when my mom emigrated to Sweden before the fall of communism, when I followed in 1990, and then Sweden was again like a different planet. There was not only bananas, but there were lots of other things that I had never dreamt of. So this feeling of abundance that we definitely didn't have then.
Did you find it difficult to share more with people once you'd moved out of Romania? Because for all of your life, you've been told don't talk to people outside of the home about conversations that happened in the home, and be careful with even friends of the family and stuff like that. Did you find it difficult to trust people?
I didn't, because I think I wasn't very good at that to begin with. But I remember it took a long time before I no longer feared authority. Swedish cops are very nice, but I was terrified of them for a long time without doing anything. Just you see a police car and you're afraid. Arbitrary exercise of power in Romania was something you just absorbed and had to get used to.
So when you look back on your time in Romania, what would you say was the best things about your life there?
Despite this book and despite the political environment in the book, I had a happy childhood. I spent a lot of time just playing outdoors. I didn't have the experience that adults had during communism. I didn't have to provide for anyone. I wasn't worried about putting food on the table. So my childhood was running around in the forest and playing and being annoyed about having to queue. But it wasn't traumatic in the sense that maybe that time suggests. I'm just being honest.
And that's quite common with a lot of interviewees, is they had fantastic childhoods and have very fond memories of the childhoods despite the hardships around the family. Inevitably, the other question is, what was the worst thing you found about life in Romania? That must have been a very difficult choice for your mother and father to take one child to safety and the other to remain behind.
I don't think they felt that I wasn't safe. I was with my grandmother and there was no war or anything, no unrest. But parents want to be with their kids and kids want to be with their parents. So in that sense, it was strange. And I was aware of it, that one of the ways kids always tease each other, and one of the ways my friends were teasing me, every now and again they would come shouting, your parents are back, your parents are back. And I would run out into the parking lot and no, they were not back.
God, that's an awful trick to play on you.
Well, you fall for it once or twice and then you're dead.
Yeah, I guess so. But, no, I can't. That sounds terrible. How would you sell the book to somebody who's not read it? We've gone through some of the details here, but what would you say to a Cold War Conversations listener as to why they should go out there and read this?
I tried to give a sense of what it was like to be a child in Romania in the 1980s without being didactic about it, and with some humor and by also exaggerating some of the regime's obsessions, like in The Strand with Konstantin, this crime that he's investigating. They would show scenes from Hollywood movies on the news and present them as real, to show how much criminality there is in the West. And they were always bragging about how we have no crime in Romania. And there's people who still think that today. They think there was no crime at the time. Not that you were never told there was any, but that there really wasn't. The political satire in the book is mainly around that, and how the regime deals with an obvious crime.
I guess it's something that we've not really mentioned so far, but it is darkly funny, the book, but it's also deeply moving, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed it. There's a lot of light and darkness in there, and from the interviews that I've done, it's a great fictional insight into what it would have been like to have lived, particularly in the 1980s, in the last years of the Ceaușescu regime.
Thank you. I hope so.
Definitely. Oana's book, Astronaut, is available via a link in the episode information, and every purchase will help support the podcast. Want to learn more about this episode? Don't miss the extras, such as curated videos, photos and other content. Just look for the link in the episode information. Special thanks to the generous efforts of our financial supporters who keep the show on the air. If you'd like to join this select band, go to coldwarconversations.com/donate. The Cold War conversation continues in our Facebook discussion group. Just search for Cold War Conversations on Facebook. Thanks very much for listening, and see you next week.